Awesome. Hey, I'm Nathan Fowle. I'm the chair of the Pownell Conservation Commission. This is a special meeting for the Conservation Commission to do a public presentation of our current working draft of the Pownell Town Forest Integrated Management Plan. So that is the only thing on our agenda for tonight. And we're going to go ahead and jump into it as soon as possible. We just have to do a couple super quick administrative things. The first being just a quick roll call of Concom members who are here. So Megan, if you want to go ahead and start. Nathan Fowle.
Tom Zolper.
And then Janie, I don't know if you can unmute yourself there and just holler.
Yes, Janie Wilkerson.
Awesome. Hey, Janie.
Hey.
All right, so we have a quorum. So I guess we just need a motion to go ahead and like approve the agenda, and then we can go for it.
So moved.
All right, do I have a second? All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're good.
Following is an option here.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start out with Tessa. If you want to run the slide presentation, you can, or you can just holler at me when you want to switch slides. I think you can just sort of arrow, yeah, I'll get you where you want to go.
Hey, what's the best place for me to be?
Yeah, whatever's good for you. And do you want to just introduce yourself to the?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi. Tessa McGann. I'm your county forester. I work for the state of Vermont. I had the flu this weekend. Just I shouldn't be contagious, but I'm masking just in case. But hopefully you can
Doing that.
Hopefully you can hear me. Just motion if I get muffled. Yeah, I work for the state. For the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. Primarily in my role, we work with private landowners. We oversee the UVA program, current use for forest land. Some of you might know what that is. That takes up most of my time. But as time permits, I also get to help towns manage municipal forests, which is where I get to be a real forester, really. It's a joy to do it. That's why I'm here. I helped put together this forest management plan as part of the larger integrated management plan that you'll hear about later over the last 6 months or so. So we ran this by the select board at the beginning of December. Pretty much we got mostly, thumbs up, but with a couple notes. So now we're bringing this next draft to you and to the public. Really excited to get your feedback and make any adjustments as appropriate. And so quick overview. Today I'm going to talk very quickly about data collection, how we gather data for this plan, the forest management plan, an overview of the forest.
So can I just interrupt for 2 seconds? For the general public, would you say what a forest management plan is? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And I'm happy to answer questions as we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, a forest management plan. It's really 2 parts. One, we take a look at the forest, and so part of it is describing how the forest is now, assessing the health, the dynamics that are at play, what's growing there, how it's growing. And then we think about what the goals are of whoever the landowners are, in this case, the Pownell community. And we think, is this forest on track to those goals? Are there ways that we can support the forest meeting those goals? And then the plan part is, how do we plan to meet those goals?
Thank you.
And so we do an assessment to think about what does the forest need? And then we think about what does the community need? And then how do we meet both needs as best we can? So that's what the plan is.
Thank you.
Great. So we collected the data. I'll talk about that. I'll give a quick overview of the forest. It's a huge forest. There's a lot to say. The plan I wrote is like 65 pages. So I'm going to give you a very brief summary.
Read them all.
Yeah.
We'll try and keep it to as close to an hour as possible.
Yeah. And then I'll go a little bit more deeply into the management recommendations that I'm making. So data collection. Oh, I wish it were a little bit bigger, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, you don't need to read those points, but it's just, there's a full effect. That's the town forest that we're talking about. It's 153.2 acres, I think. It's huge. To collect the field data for this plan, I had the help of 3 other county foresters over the course of 2 weeks. They came for part of the time. Altogether, we visited 102 different points. Those green areas, the green overlay on that map, those are the areas of your forest that are considered steep slopes, an official designation. That's greater than 35% slope. That's very steep. So you might notice that there are fewer points on those steep areas. That's because we tried it out for a day and decided we didn't need to collect as thorough data to use our time wisely. So, but we did get around. At each plot, we collected information on select trees about species and size and status. And then we also took notes about the forest structure, forest health, other plants, wildlife signs, the conditions of the trails, all kinds of stuff that we were observing at the plots and then as we traveled between the plots. So that all happened this last July. This is just a picture. If it was bigger, I don't know if you get the effect of how steep it is. It makes me a little dizzy looking at it. Yeah, but it was very fun. So what did we find? So just to start us off, overall, there are, broadly speaking, 5 different forest types on your town forest. The purple is a northern hardwood type forest. So that's where the slope is a little flatter, or it's in concave areas where more soil can accumulate, more water can accumulate. Maybe it's a little shadier. So it's home to more of our northern species. Maple beech birch is the typical grouping in this forest. And this is the forest that is most common across Vermont and northern New England. The red areas are our red oak northern hardwood forests. So those are places where it's either more convex shaped, so soil and water is shutting off more.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What do you mean by red areas?
They're like
It's a red border, but.
so it's like a brownish red, yeah, kind of
I'm sorry, yes.
a blood red,
Yes.
if you will, yeah.
Right.
So south-facing slopes that are warmer, sunnier, drier, just more acclimated for red oak, but also hickories and black birch and white pine, some of our more, mesic species, more typical of central New England. The orange, beige, tan zones. Can I indicate things with the clicker here?
You don't know.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. Those are really special sites. Those are the dry oak zones. So those are the crests of the hills here. There's very, very thin soils, super drought prone, super sunny. There's a lot of chestnut oak here, but overall the trees are short and stunted. They're not great, very fertile areas, but because of that, it's a unique ecosystem. It's very sunny and open, and the understory is full of mountain laurel and blueberry and huckleberry. They're really beautiful. There's a couple slivers of green in the southern half. Those are super steep, north-facing, shady hemlock zones. And then a couple ribbons of blue following the waterways. And those are our riparian buffers, where the slopes are steep, sensitive soils, wet soils. We're treating those separately as waterway forests. All right. So from those 5, I broke it into 21 different forest stands. And so you break it down further because of slight differences in the site that leads to differences in the species composition. Differences in management history also leads to different conditions today. All of that means that I believe that these 21 different areas should be treated differently going forward and just considered slightly different forest types from each other. They're distinct. Here they are listed out, which is hard to read for those of us in the room. And I'm not going to go through each one. You don't have to read it, but just to give you a quick idea. I'm going to share some of the highlights, what I think of as notable features. This map, all of the colored overlays, are areas that the state, my coworkers in the Fish and Wildlife Department, have mapped as state significant natural communities. So these are ecosystems that are really exemplary or really rare in our state. And some of them are because we are at the southwest corner. So they might be more common in New York or Massachusetts, but they're super rare in Vermont, so they're special. All of the lighter green areas, that's all the red oak northern hardwood forest, which we do have elsewhere in Vermont. But they thought that this was just a super exemplary portion of it. Part of it is that it covers such a large area. We usually see it in smaller pockets elsewhere. So there's not any, in particular, any statewide special protections of these areas, but it is recommended that we sort of manage them to stay in those natural community types. So there's a certain assemblage of plant and animal species, and we're not going to be managing them away from that. For example, I wouldn't go and harvest all of the red oak, which would change that forest drastically. But I'll say more about that later. But they're really special. The picture I have is in one of those dry oak communities. You can see how sunny it is. The forest floor is just carpeted with berry bushes. It's really awesome. Related to both of those, there's really great species diversity, partially because you're at this southern zone where you get, on the sunny slopes, you get the southern species, on the northern slopes, you get the northern species. You have over 25 tree species tallied, which is good. That's a good number. Most common are sugar maple, beech, and red oak, if you were wondering. And there's also really high quality wildlife habitat because you have so many oaks, you have hickories, you have beech, that's all producing nuts for wildlife. Then you have these zones with huckleberry, blueberry, serviceberry, that's fruit for wildlife. There's just a lot of food. It's a big intact forested area that just is necessary for certain animals for living or traveling. Areas of softwood cover, it's great. I saw a lot of sign, even though it's really steep, they're still out there. There's a lot of signs of bear and deer and turkey, all of it. A couple significant concerns now. The first one I'll mention is beech leaf disease. Have you all heard of that? Okay, so it's there. It seems to be the photo on the top right shows the striping that's the most clear sign of beech leaf disease, and that's what shows up in the first year. And we did see that across in a lot of different places, but then the photo below that where it seemed the leaves are coming out shriveled, it seems like some leaves, the buds have aborted. There's fewer leaves overall. That's the more advanced stages. So it looks like you're in the slightly more advanced stages. Beech leaf disease is for those of you who didn't nod, if there are any of you, it's a relatively new pest, exotic pest to North America. It's actually a nematode. It's not a disease. It's a tiny little worm that impacts the buds and then how the leaves come out and the ability of the tree to photosynthesize. And it can kill trees rapidly, we've seen, like 3 to 5 years for smaller trees. But it's so new that we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. But it's a concern. The photo on the bottom left shows a bear claw mark in a beech tree. Beech nuts are really important for the food source, is really important to all kinds of wildlife. Fortunately, you do have a lot of alternatives on your forest already with the oaks and hickories, but we're still concerned about how this will impact our wildlife and overall forest dynamics into the future. As I said, beech is one of the most common species across your forest. And then the conditions of trails. This actually isn't a picture from your town forest, but it could be. It's not steep enough. It's hard to see for us in the room again, but back there's some rutting. This is what we hate to see because water will just keep channeling that down and eroding out. In the foreground, if you could see it, most of the soil has washed away, exposing larger rocks and cobbles, stones. This is what we see across the pound forest, and it's what we don't want to be seeing.
What causes that rutting?
So it's when you have trails that don't have proper features to prevent erosion, things like water bars, when they're not maintained to smooth out. Ruts will occur when people have vehicles or using ATVs or vehicles when it's muddy and wet. You just have really soft soils in the Taconics also, and a really steep forest, so the water will run faster. It's and I'm sure we don't want erosion. It is bad for water quality, can increase flooding downstream, is taking away the building blocks of the forest, which is the soil itself. It can be more expensive to repair as it goes on, all kinds of things. Again, kind of hard to see, but there's a spaghetti network of old logging roads and ATV trails and all kinds of trails across the forest. And on the left, this is a list of all the stands again. Everything highlighted yellow are stands in which we definitely noticed that there are issues with the trails that need to be addressed. So that's in 10 out of the 21. Not too shabby, but it's still, yeah. It's something where I'm thinking about as I write this plan, how to address this. Yeah. Okay. So let's move forward into management recommendations. I just shared a little bit about what's special, things we want to protect and enhance and support, some concerns, things we might want to address looking forward. Great. I'll start off with the management goals, which are come from that integrated management plan, sort of I think the Conservation Commission had a lot with putting this together and Parks and Rec, but the goals are promoting old forest characteristics. That's things like bigger trees, mix of different age groups of trees, good diversity, lots of deadwood around. I'll say a little bit more about that. Foster structural diversity. That goes very hand in hand with old forest characteristics. That's trees growing at different densities, trees of different sizes, trees in different conditions, trees of different ages. We want to control invasive species. That should be a no-brainer. Improve wildlife habitat. That also goes very much hand in hand with old forest and structural diversity in many cases. We want food for wildlife. We want habitat for wildlife. Supporting sustainable timber production. That's not the primary goal. That was made clear to me. We're not trying to make money off of this forest, but we want to support our rural economies. And also it can be complementary to all the other goals. And then enhancing food, foraging resources. I don't know as much about that, but we're taking it into consideration. And
That's for humans?
yes.
You want to talk about that for 30 seconds?
But happy to once Tess is finished.
Cool.
Sure.
I don't want to jump in.
Right on.
So this is all informing what the plan is, as well as, what I found in the forest. That's where, we're seeing what's there, and then what the goals of the community are, and then what do we do when those two come together. Off the bat, I think 8 of your 21 stands should be designated as reserve forests. And these are areas that I think we should treat more with passive management, basically letting nature take its course. Hard to see on the map. They're the more shaded areas. I wish it was more clear. Here's another version of the same map. It's still not super clear, but this is that map with those 5 forest types. And so the areas that are reserved, which have a dark hatch mark across them, are those dry oak areas. So again, special ecosystems, not great timber. The trees are small, pretty stunted anyway. Hard to access, and they're already performing the ecosystem functions that they're meant to perform. They're on the right track. Ditto for those really steep hemlock areas, and then those sensitive riparian zones. So basically all of those areas, yes.
With the hemlocks, did you notice any disease in there?
I didn't see any hemlock woolly adelgid, which is another invasive, or hemlock elongate scale. They looked healthy.
Is there anything designated as old growth in there, and what would that mean?
I didn't find anywhere that I thought this is definitely old growth, although there's one, I almost feel like I should get up, but there's one tiny bit of green on the far along the western boundary. It's like a little spit of it.
Southwest.
But yeah, it's incredibly steep. That was like hands and knees climbing through it. And that area looked like maybe no one bothered to cut it before because it was so steep.
And what kind of trees are there?
Hemlock, yeah, really big. And like big ones that have fallen, that's a big sign of like, okay, these trees have been around so long that they're living out their natural, they're like getting big and old and then falling. And where they fall, there's a lot of little yellow birch and hemlock and red maple seedlings growing and moss, and it's very pretty, and it's a tiny little pocket.
And what would that be in years when you're looking at those trees? What's your guess about the?
So this is a very interesting debate about what qualifies as old growth forest. So that pocket I feel confident saying is old.
Mhm.
I am in the camp that old growth means it hasn't been impacted by settler colonialism in North America. And so that would be, very old, pre-1700s, pre-1600s. I don't know if it's that old or if it's just been a very long time
That's
since
exciting to
it's,
think.
yeah, but it's old, yeah.
So if you cut into one of those really old fallen trees, could you count the rings? Get an idea?
Potentially, or we could core, they make instruments, increment bores, so you can just take a tiny little sliver all the way through the core. We could
We had a lot.
hike out there. No, it doesn't take a lot of money. I mean, it takes time and effort, but that could be a really fun project. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so these areas I'm recommending pretty much hands off. Except, I mean, in case if there are invasive plants growing in them, things that were, human influenced and impairing the natural stand dynamics, then I would suggest that we get involved, but otherwise let things run.
Are there current populations of invasives?
Yeah.
Those reservoirs?
There's some along the riparian areas adjacent to other stands.
What species?
The most common around the forest was barberry.
So
Yeah, which is not, public enemy number one, but yeah. And overall, your town forest doesn't have a lot of invasive plants, like overall, pretty good. I think because it's tucked away a little bit.
And it's cheap, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
So,
it's
there's,
relatively undisturbed.
yeah. So that leaves 13 stands to potentially work in. And in this, over the next 10 years, I'm recommending that we consider harvesting in 7 of those. And they're on the map there. The ones that are in color on the map. Why? These are the goals that I envision with these harvests. To create areas of young forest. Overall, this forest there are like 2 generations of trees across this forest, in my estimation. One that's maybe 100, give or take 20 years, and then a younger one that it seems like there was harvesting that happened across a lot of the forest about 20 to 30 years ago, and really got a second generation of trees going. There aren't a lot of areas of much younger trees. There was some more recent harvesting in stand 5, but that about 5 years ago, but that's it. There also aren't really big old trees across most of the forest. So part of this plan is to create areas of younger forests that diversifies age class, that gives back to that structural complexity, structural diversity. It creates habitat, a different kind of habitat for wildlife. A lot of wildlife like to feed in young forest areas. And I'm also thinking about that question of the beach, with a lot of it potentially dying. Once it's dead, it's hard to get people to go in and do work there. And there are some concerns that the beach leaves are not very, the leaf litter that they create is not favorable for a lot of different plants to regenerate in. So in some areas, thinking about, well, maybe we go in now and create opportunities for other kinds of nut-bearing trees to start regenerating and getting going, so that if we lose beech rapidly, it's not the same level of destruction that it might be.
so for those kinds of trees, is there a market? Are there people, eager to go in there and do that kind of work?
Cutting pure beech, you can use it for firewood, but not so much. But in these areas, there are other trees too, and the combination of different trees that are being cut, I think, would make the sales doable. Yeah.
Well, and just to throw in, there are some out west, there's some conservation districts that run cooperative programs with their communities where they have a forester. In this case, that could be you. That goes out and marks trees for thinning, and then members of the community go out and actually do that thinning.
That's really
It
cool.
would be a viable alternative to
Okay.
trying to get a cutter in that's, I mean, I'm just looking at those trees, I wouldn't want to go and cut those down. But I just don't think you'd make a profit on it, but it could be that selling of firewood licenses and having some supervised thinning from members of the community, since we have such a depth of skill in that area in this town, that might be a good alternative to consider.
Yeah, I'm all for considering the alternatives, especially because some of these areas the access is questionable in terms of getting harvesting equipment for commercial harvest out to them. So yeah, those are all good thoughts. So yeah, the goal is create, we didn't get far, create areas of younger forests. Also give room for larger trees to get even bigger. We want some really big trees, and we want to favor growth on vigorous trees, the species that we want, have some influence there. I want to increase the amount of large dead trees standing and on the ground. And that can sound a little backwards to people, but it's one of those features of an old forest is that there are really big trees, dead trees standing, and dead trees on the ground. And those, as they die, they provide incredible habitat. As they rot out, they're full of insects, that's for birds. Cavities are created, that's homes. When they're on the ground, and they give back to soil health, they retain water, they protect from erosion. Again, more habitat. We've found that there's an array of benefits from having both dead, standing and on the ground deadwood. And in most of our forests in Vermont, we have that in smaller sizes, but we don't have that in the bigger sizes. And so there's been a movement to introduce a little bit more of that into our forests intentionally, whether by girdling trees and leaving them, or just making sure that in a harvest, we're leaving some trees that look like they're about to die. I think historically we're like, oh, we'll take out all of the sick ones. But now we're like, maybe we'll just let those stay and die and let that death be a part of the process of this forest. But then also occasionally just dropping and leaving trees on the ground too. So I have introduced into anywhere where I recommended harvesting, I recommended doing some of that too. As I mentioned before, I want to encourage specifically the growth of oaks and hickories, those nut producing trees where we think we'll see a lot of beech death. Not everywhere. There are areas where we don't know how beech leaf disease will play out, so I'm not trying to rush in and do something everywhere. There are a lot of places where I want to leave it and wait and see, but just in certain pockets. I want to improve the trails. So we talked about this with the select board. I think if we do commercial harvests, which I do think could be viable for sure, they're interested in putting that money back into the forest. So if we have machinery out there, while that equipment is there, they can do a lot of road repair while they're there, especially if we're going to take the money that they're making from the timber and let them spend that money basically running their machines to fix our trails. So that's a goal. And then I'm a fan of supporting the rural economy. So
Are you recommending any kind of buffer zone between trails and snags to limit?
I haven't written that into the plan. I mean, I will be thinking about that when I mark trees. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm just thinking if you end up changing jobs or something, having that in the plan for follow-up forestry.
Sure.
For risk mitigation purposes.
I should have my.
Can you just say more about that, what that means and how?
Well, if you got a big dead tree with a bunch of branches hanging right over a trail and somebody's hiking in it and dust comes and they get crushed. I've worked in forestry on and off throughout my career, and I've almost been impaled by alders on multiple occasions during high winds. So having like 100-foot buffer off the trail edge to ensure that in the area where the town may have some liability for the safety of hikers, that there isn't a proximity to that risk of a potential falling snag.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll add that to the plan. That's a good note. And I will say, Mike used the term snag, which I don't think I have it on the slide. And I don't know. I've got to define it. That's just a standing dead tree snag. Yeah. Other questions at this point?
Question on the, you want to encourage maple hickories on the nut trees. Are you thinking of planting or are you thinking of letting the squirrels do it?
Letting this, at this point in this plan, letting the squirrels do it, but we can reevaluate down the road. Yeah. And I just want to say, these are the specific goals of these specific harvests. I'm not trying to do all of this everywhere. I want to make that clear too. So. I had this again just to be like, oh, it's tying into all these goals. Look, but I think you guys got that. Okay, what is that specifically looking like? So in these different areas, there's basically four different prescriptions that I have recommended. In stand 18, I want to do some patch cuts. And I'm going to explain what these mean. Yeah. In 3 different stands, I want to do single tree and group selection. In 2 areas that have more pine, I want to do a little crop tree release and again, open up some groups and then an irregular shelter wood down in stand 4. So what does this all mean? So, it's in 18. So patch cuts. So these are kind of like mini clear cuts. It's opening up areas 2 to 4 acres. To get a lot of sun on the forest floor and regenerate a great diversity of species. So we do a handful of these across stand 18, which I think is about 90 acres in size, totaling no more than 15 acres. I wouldn't necessarily go up to that number, and we can talk about that if that's a lot. Within those areas, I would want to retain certain oaks, maybe hickories, snags, trees that are wildlife trees, cavities. It wouldn't be completely open. We would have some scattered trees about and then on the ground.
So my experience, when you open up to light, you also open up to invasives.
That's particularly true if they're already there. And so, and I'm going to bring this up later, but
Yeah.
and you'll see at the end, any place where there are invasives and we're doing harvesting, I'm recommending to manage those first. And they aren't, again, infestations are light across the property. So yeah, I think that's manageable.
I guess that's a quick question, Tessa. So, do you need the 2 to 4 acres? Otherwise you wouldn't get enough young growth. I mean, how come you can't get young growth with selective harvesting?
So I'm going for 2 to 4 acres here because there's I saw quite a lot of evidence of really heavy deer browse in this stand. And deer like to eat a lot of species that we like to grow. And experience and research has shown that when we go a little bit larger with our openings, it kind of overwhelms the deer and we have a much better chance of things like the oaks and sugar maples and hickories making it through. Yeah, otherwise deer can be quite the selective player. And then you mostly just get beech, which is not a promising future. Also in the stand is particularly heavy to beech already. And again, if you're doing smaller openings and cutting where there's a lot of beech already, it tends to root sprout and then also dominate. So there's a reason for the bigger ones in this.
So it's slightly counterintuitive. You think you're opening up deer grazing areas, but basically you need enough area. They'll eat some, but enough will grow.
So they'll eat the new ones, yeah.
And that's part of why I'm recommending doing enough of up to 15 acres, because that also helps distribute the deer pressure. Yeah.
Deer pressure is just normal in this forest. It's not excessive. In my yard, it's excessive.
Yeah. In really steep, it varies. I mean, it's such a big forest.
Yeah.
It's more excessive in the northern part, I think, and in the stand towards the south, because there's more shallow slopes, I think, in the northern part, where it's super steep. I think the deer are like, they're like a little intimidated by that, and so that I saw less pressure from them. Yeah. Okay, comfortable moving on?
Yeah.
Okay, single tree and group selection. So the group selection is kind of like the patch cuts, but they're smaller, like 1/2 acre to 2 acres. And these are in areas where there's less deer pressure, so I'm less concerned about that. And it's also more fertile soils, so I can expect that those young trees will grow quickly and get above browse height more quickly. The single tree selection is sort of, you're going through the forest and making growing space, small areas of growing space, either for existing trees, or maybe you're going to open up a little pocket of light for new trees throughout all the area between those groups. That's a really quick summary of what single tree selection is. It's a thinning, basically, in most people's views. That's what it is. Not a super heavy thinning. But the idea is to give more growing room to trees of all sizes, basically.
And in those stands, would you be recommending leaving the vast majority of the deadwood?
I don't recommend removing any deadwood.
Well, not the recently cut wood, in these.
So from these harvests, no, I'm recommending commercial harvests in these. Yeah, so I have some qualifications about what cut wood to leave, but otherwise I'm imagining that commercial loggers will be taking what they can to sell to the mill. Yeah. And this is in 3 different stands, 11, 15, and 16. So crop tree release and group selection is very similar to the last one, except the crop tree release, that means you're going through and looking for select trees that you want to get bigger. These are the crop trees. Maybe it's a nut-bearing tree like an oak or hickory, or just a species you want to keep around, or just a very vigorous tree or a big tree that you think, I want this tree to get even bigger. And so you give it more light on its crown on 2 to 4 sides. So you just open up right around it. You're not going through the entire matrix of the forest and thinning out all of it. You're focusing those efforts on specific trees. So it's lighter than the single tree selection.
So does the forester have to go through and put tape or something on this?
We use paint to mark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep. And it would be me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you all know this, but I do this for free for your town, other than what you pay in taxes. So this isn't at a cost to you. All right, so this is the last one, irregular shelterwood. It's hardest to describe, which comes across in the name. The goal here is to create the right light conditions on the forest floor, sunny, enough light for something new to grow, but not too sunny, because oaks don't like it too sunny. So the goal here is to regenerate oaks in particular. So the picture there is a picture of a shelterwood. So it is quite open, but it's not completely open, right? So you want the conditions to be favorable for oak to come in. And then once it gets established, like oak likes a little bit of shade to sprout, but then it likes a lot of sun to grow. So maybe 15 years down the line, we would have a crew come in and just drop some of these trees just to get a little bit more sun in there. It's also irregular because it's not a uniform thing. This image is quite uniform, but across the stand, there will be areas that we're not going to touch because it's younger growth. We don't need this to happen. It's irregular in shape across the stand. And that's happening. I recommend that in stand 4. Just a couple additional considerations. So recreational trails were brought up. That's on the right. Those yellow trails are what we hope to ultimately be the recreational trail system. That's very different from that huge spaghetti network we saw before. So where these go through the harvest areas, so that's anything in color there. I'm just calling attention to the fact that we're going to take special considerations about how those things impact each other. Hopefully the harvesting can protect, improve trails. We'll work together with signage to make sure visitors know all of that. I also mentioned before invasive plant removal. It's anywhere where there's invasive plants where we're harvesting, we'll do that first or at the same time. And then, like I mentioned before, I have recommendations for creating more standing and down dead wood. Here's the timeline. This is subject to change. Particularly because all the harvests planned in 2031 and 2034 that I just threw out there, they're in a part of the forest, the northern section, that is really hard to access from the access that you have. So that's all pretty much conditional on your neighbors allowing that access, and what timing they would allow for that. So that might get pushed back, yeah, just saying that. And then I have an update in 10 years that I actually realized, I don't know if that's what is like when you need to have it updated per the grant or anything.
We're proposing 5-year updates, but
Okay. We'll talk about it. So that's the proposed timeline. It's staggered. It wouldn't happen all at once. And then I also want to make the point that the plan is amendable. None of this would be written in stone once we approve it. And I very much believe in monitoring conditions and changing as needed. So with that, I don't know if we should pause for feedback on this portion now. Okay, yeah, then let's do that. Questions, concerns, things you want to see? Yeah.
What's your proposed method of invasives control? Are you talking cut and spray or?
I was thinking mechanical. It's like not so heavy that I think we need herbicides.
And biological control, is that something you've considered also?
For invasive plants? No. Yeah, I don't know much about it. So if you
We did a whole series of workshops this summer on utilizing goats. It's something we
goats,
do a
okay,
lot.
fine, okay.
But I used to run a company that did that back in Oregon. We
Is it what?
goats.
Yeah, yeah.
And blackberries and all the English ivy.
One should have really.
If mechanical is a good option, no,
I think mechanical is probably the best option.
it is.
Here, yeah. Yeah, and you probably have perspective on this, but I see using goats where it's really dense and you really just kind of want to nuke it. And
It depends.
it depends,
It
yeah.
depends, and you also need a very skilled grazer to get it done. which
Yeah.
There's like 3 of them in the state that know how to do it.
Good.
And I guess my second question, then I'll shut up for a while. Have you all, and this is more to me, have you all reached out to Eric Bishop over at Southwest Tech? Because he would love to get his students out to help you guys.
Yes, yeah, I had a great hike with him, probably about this time last year. And at that point, we were sort of a little too early in the process to figure out exactly how to get that to interface. But Eric and Tessa have worked together previously, so we are hoping, yeah, to get those guys involved, definitely. Great.
I
Yeah,
can't believe that. That's a great idea.
I asked Eric to come tonight, but I asked him pretty last minute, but we worked together quite a lot.
What would they do, the students?
They conduct cuts, they do invasives removal, they have a whole forestry and heavy equipment program at Southwest Tech that's phenomenal. And, way cheaper for the town to get students to come do it and get an education about it than have somebody come in.
Definitely.
They have helped us on our Hoosick Bend Trail in the past, removing some trees there, so they have worked with us.
It looks like we have a question here. Do I have control of that?
Kate does, yeah.
Okay,
Hey, Tessa, is that for me?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Nate, you were inviting somebody to speak to the foraging piece, and I was just curious about that.
Oh, yeah, Michael, do you want to just give a super quick?
Sure. So those of you who know me, I'm an agroecology specialist. I work for the Conservation District. A few of the species that Tessa's really highlighted, the oak, the hickories, all of those berry species are both wildlife value and have incredibly high human food value. So oak, yeah, you can make a really good bread flour out of oak. You just got to leach the tannins out. It's a whole thing. But those were all, for the most part, indigenous people's foodstuffs pre-European contact. There's some ways to manage forests to select for those species. Prescribed fire is often used. Protecting individual protection around species that you want to maintain and stimulate. You can also do some selective planting if you wanted to plant like American chestnut back in from the American Chestnut Foundation. I know I've heard stories from the old timers, this entire mountain used to be American chestnut back in the day.
So if the beech are dying, you might as well.
Yeah, and there are a lot of forest farming methods that could be applied to this stand. My concerns largely focus around something we haven't talked about tonight, that's the environmental toxicology of the forest. Especially around the tannery dump site and the PFOA contamination from atmospheric deposition. Just doing some soil testing and also fruit and nut testing to see if there are high levels of PFOA
I
or
actually
other.
wondered as a hunter if there's a way we could test venison meat and everything, because I was wondering. the same thing.
You can, yeah, you definitely can. That's why a lot of the farms up in Maine have been getting shut down, is their beef was
Yeah,
testing.
that's what I'm thinking.
So there is some due diligence that you all as the Conservation Commission would really want to do in advance of opening the woods up to unlimited foraging. Like you can, as long as you have a warning up, I guess people can forage at their own risk to an extent. But before you're really putting investment into actively stimulating select areas for human foraging versus wildlife foraging, doing some of that due diligence on soil testing and fruit and nut testing would, in my mind, be a really critical step before you started really opening that up. Because you have a lot of great, like, I know, there's a lot of bitter nut hickory in those woods. Last year, we were buying that stuff for $5 a gallon for nuts and sending it off to an oil processor. So you don't necessarily have to cut trees down to make money grow out of them. You usually, in my experience, it's actually better to leave them there. Yeah, so there's a lot of potential because if you had indigenous sites, and when I read in the integrated management plan, you do have some historic indigenous sites that very likely that the area was managed in some way for human food production in the past, and you have some of the remnants of that in the woods still today.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, that's really helpful context.
That's like a fair.
Cool. Okay, I think in the interest of time, we should probably kind of roll ahead here. Are there any last questions anybody wants to ask Tessa while we got her here?
Sorry.
No, that's all really great. I didn't want to cut any of this up. It's so helpful. Yeah. Fire.
Are you considering including some dry hydrants or it's strategically located throughout this stand? Because we've had a number in the past few years, rather bad brush fires here in Pownell. But there was, I think it was that 2,000 acre burn down in Great Barrington last year. So have you taken that, so those fire regimes are changing. We've had these really bad droughts the last few years. Now we have this beach disease coming in. So I would consider fire risk in my assessment of this. And have you done that? And if so, what's the plan?
I haven't done that. Yeah, typically, my training as a forester, it's not something we usually think about in Vermont.
Yeah.
I know it's different in this southwest corner and it's obviously changing. So I haven't, but
If you want to talk through
Yeah.
that, I did forestry school out in the Pacific Northwest, so I did a lot of wildland fire stuff. Yeah.
We have, I would love to talk a little more about this. We've talked with some folks from the fire department and the emergency response team. And so what we do have is kind of a plan to make sure that they have access to spots higher up on the forest via some gates with, codes and stuff. And the town bought the fire departments a couple of really high-tech utility vehicles that are for firefighting up there. So not perfect, and certainly, the more we can think about it, the better.
What is a dry hydrant use?
It's very basically, it is a hydrant that is located typically near a water source that you can prime and use in firefighting. So either a retention pond or a stream. The districts in Vermont run a program. So if you guys want to talk about getting some dry hydrants funded, holler at me, you got the number.
Awesome.
Retention.
But yes, there's the risk is growing over time. So we're not we're not gonna necessarily be seeing really bad wildfires in the next 10 years, 20 years, but 30, 40, 50 years down the line.
Mhm.
Nobody's got a crystal ball, but
I think there's definitely some opportunities to do that. I know the Fish and Game Club has found a way to sort of take water out of the river to use for their camp. So, yeah, that's definitely something worth looking into. Cool.
and my last little plug, and we've talked about this, but I don't think I've said this publicly. A lot of funding is tied up in private lands conservation. If Pownell were to form a Friends of the Pownell Town Forest, 501(c)(3), and lease that forest for 20 years to that group that's overseen by the Conservation Commission, a lot of this work, great work that Tessa's recommending, could be a lot less of a ding on the town's budget if you have the option to use like USDA cost share programs, Forest Service cost share programs, et cetera. So I know it's an extra hoop to jump through, but we've done this a couple of times now where we've worked with either state agencies or towns and established a separate entity so they can access those funds.
Definitely worth talking about. Yeah, we can talk with Donald and the other sort of folks involved and kind of get an idea of whether that would be possible and sort of how that would work. Cool, thanks. All right. Jen, you ready? Thank you so much, Tessa. Thanks for coming out. All right, so now I will pull up. Whoops. All right. So, Jen, do you want to introduce yourself real quick here before we get into it?
Sure. I'm Jen Boucher. I'm on Pownell Parks and Rec. And I have worked on securing access to the town forest for the last 5 years. And so I feel like we're crossing the finish line here with this. So it's really great. Actually, do you mind moving the slides?
No problem.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
So Tessa gave her overview on the timber management plan, which is one component of the town forest integrated management plan. And so Nate and I will tag team and talk about some other pieces of the Pownell Town Forest Management Plan. So just by way of background, Tessa mentioned that the Pownell Town Forest is over 1,000 acres, and it's made up of basically 3 contiguous tracts. Back in 2002, the largest parcel was acquired, 700 acres, which was known as the North Pownell Tannery Woodlands, and that was after the tannery filed for bankruptcy, and the town was able to acquire that with the help of funding from the VHCB and the Vermont Land Trust. Then in 2023, a contiguous piece of land was for sale, and the town was able to acquire that again with the help of the VLT and VHCB. And in 2024, the acquisition of land for an access road was acquired off of, it's called Nicholas Way, adjacent to the gravel pit. And that was primarily funded through a VOREC grant. And along with that, there are plans that are currently in the works and going through the Act 250 process for a parking area and some road and trail improvements. And again, a lot of this was acquired with the help of the Vermont Land Trust, Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and the VOREC grant. So why do we have an integrated management plan? Well, first of all, it's because we have to. The conservation easements, which govern the properties, both the 2002 acquisition and the 2023 acquisition, both have conservation easements, and it requires the integrated management plan. We're going to use this document as a guide for our stewardship of the property. And as Tessa spoke about, we want to ensure the health of the forest and the critical ecosystems that she talked about that are in the forest. We want to make sure that as we open up recreation and encourage education in the forest, that's all done in a responsible manner. And we want to of course, plan for the forest needs, which Tessa gave a nice outline of her recommendations and the timeline for that. But the plan includes governance of the property, background information, very detailed information about the conservation easements, the property description, the historical and cultural significance of the property, the public engagement process, property rules and guidelines, natural resources, and the timber management plan. So it's like everything will be centrally located in this one document. So the basis for what we have proposed in the integrated management plan is based on extensive public outreach over the last 18 months. This was led by the Williams College environmental class about a year ago. They had a semester-long outreach, I guess, with the visioning workshops, a public survey. They hosted focus groups, and they brought back that information and compiled it into a report and presented it to the select board. And a lot of the information that they gathered was integrated into this plan. We've had group hikes, Conservation Commission, Parks and Rec have both hosted group hikes with Green Mountain Club, other local folks, the Horwa, is Wendy still here? The Horwa group, Wendy came up on the hike along with that group. And Community Conversations was hosted at the Solomon Wright Public Library last August. So there's been a robust engagement process over the last 18 months. We've also been able to lean on previous management plans that were not as extensive for the property. There was a 2004 woodland plan when the first parcel was acquired, and then there's an interim plan in place since the 2023 acquisition. And then a little known fact I didn't know, that 2/3 of Vermont towns have a town forest. And so there are many other town forest management plans. And so we were able to borrow information.
Ours is one of the biggest, though. A lot of people have their dogs, when we tell them how big.
So one of the primary things that we're proposing in terms of governance is that a steering committee be formed to help oversee the town forest. This would be a citizen-led group, of course, appointed by the select board, and the ultimate authority for the Pendleton Forest always remains with the select board, but this group would help to oversee management of the forest, advance the goals and priorities, propose the updates to the plan, which we've proposed to be like at regular 5-year intervals. Although if something comes up, we could do it more frequently than that. The steering committee would provide updates to stakeholders, act as a liaison with state agencies. And then we're recommending a 7-member structure, which would include a member from Concom, a member from Parks and Rec, a member from Select Board and staff, and then 4 other interested parties from the town.
Oh, that's over to me. All right. Great. Thanks, Jen. So I'm going to just kind of go through sort of the rules and guidelines for sort of uses of the forest. And this is also based largely on the input from the public, sort of tempered by safety and sort of the guidelines of other forest management plans we looked at. So first of all, we're going to talk about the permitted uses. So this is sort of unrestricted stuff. Pedestrian traffic such as hiking, jogging, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing and picnicking, wildlife viewing and bird watching, and non-motorized mountain biking is currently fair game anywhere in the town forest that you can ride your bike to. So then next we have permitted uses with restrictions. So we are going to try and do some offer short-term recreational camping, sort of using leave no trace sort of guidelines as described in the Vermont Guide to Primitive Camping. We are going to allow campfires in designated fire pits or fire rings, which do not exist yet. So currently no fires are allowed, but we are hoping that over time we'll be able to establish a couple of campsites that'll have their own fire rings and near enough to water sources that they'll be safe. And in talking with the emergency response team and the fire department, they were saying we really want to not have any fires above about 1,200 feet, which is about the elevation of Fish and Game Camp, because water becomes much more scarce about that point seasonally. So next we have dog walking. So for a 1 year trial, we're going to do on leash dog walking, and then if we hear people complaining about it or we're having problems with litter or whatever, we can reevaluate. And with a lot of this stuff, we're really trying to kind of do these all on a trial basis, make sure they work, get continued feedback from the community, and sort of make adjustments as needed. So e-biking also is sort of a 1 year trial, and we're restricting it to class 1 e-bikes, which are bikes that are equipped with electric motors that provide assistance only when the rider is pedaling. So this wouldn't include the sort of throttle only bikes, which have the same issues, dirt bikes causing erosion and getting the ecosystem up there. One other thing that we got from the select board that we were going to add in here was we are going to look into whether horseback riding would be something we could do up there. I've reached out to a couple of the local riding clubs and businesses, and we've got somebody who's interested in going up there and taking a ride and kind of reporting back on whether or not that's possible. So that may be a cool opportunity to look at. Okay, so next we have permitted uses requiring permission from the town. So this is a little more niche. We've got special events. So that could be a picnic or an overnight with the school. I mean, the sky's the limit, but anything kind of outside of the ordinary, we would need just select board permission before you could do it, and that's a pretty simple process. The other thing that the select board wanted to encourage was that if there are folks that want to set up small maple sugaring operations for sort of personal or educational purposes, with permission, they could theoretically do that in the woods, though we haven't identified any particular spots that might be good for that. Okay, next, this is sort of getting into the hunting rules and regulations. So hunting is permitted in the forest in compliance with the laws of Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. You need a valid state hunting license. The hunting seasons change year to year, but they keep them listed on the Fish and Wildlife website. And we are going to post sort of relevant information at a kiosk at the entrance to the town forest to make sure people know, especially during sort of the prime deer hunting season where we're actually looking into closing recreation for just the 2 weeks of deer rifle hunting season, just to make room for the hunters, because that's the time where there's the highest concentration of people out there. So currently the only physical improvement on the property is the existing seasonal camp owned by the Fish and Game Club, which is going to be allowed to maintain, repair, and place the cabin as needed. And pursuant to that conservation easement, the public get access to that club. It's sort of first come, first serve, except for during hunting season. So we do hope to encourage people to go up other times in the year and use that club once we've sort of fully set up our system of how everything's going to work with the folks at Fish and Game Club, which we're having discussions with. So we will have more information on that as we sort of get closer. But for the time being, if somebody wanted to use it, they would have to, I guess, reach out to, Kevin, who runs the Fish and Game Club. Or reach out to me and I can get you in touch with those folks. Okay, so then one other thing that came from the select board that we added in was there were some folks that expressed interest in having an ADA accessible hunting blind somewhere near the Fish and Game Club. I am talking with Donald Campbell from the Vermont Land Trust about whether or not that is something we could do sort of within the confines of the conservation easement. Sort of on our first reading, the answer is no, but also they've been really cool about working with us and trying to sort of make sure that this forest provides the things that the community wants. So we're going to see what we can do. Fishing is the last part of hunting, so that will be allowed, although there aren't great points to access fishing right now. We're hoping at some point to have better access to the Hoosic River, but right now that's an area that's very, very inaccessible. So future goals. Okay, next we have prohibited activities. This is sort of based on looking at a bunch of other forest management plans and looking at folks. We've decided we are not going to allow trapping in the town forest because it poses a safety hazard to visitors and pets. And at this time, it's seen as incompatible with recreational and educational off-trail hiking by residents, school groups, researchers, and hunters. Limited exceptions may be granted by the steering committee in consultation with the VLT. If granted, signage will notify visitors of trap location and purpose. We are prohibiting timber harvest that isn't sort of sanctioned commercial timber harvest for the time being. And obviously, we're prohibiting the creation of new trails without prior sort of permission and planning. Target practice and sort of random shooting will be prohibited. So if you want to practice on a target, that's something to be done at a shooting range, not out in the town forest where there are going to be people hiking. And typically the number of hunters and hikers in the town forest make it possible for all of this stuff to happen together without any interference. This is such a big forest. The hunters have a zone they like to hunt. The trails generally sort of work around that. So I have seen 1 or 2 hunters in the entire time I've been hiking out there. They've seen me once or twice too. So it's really, at least at this time, we're not too worried about sort of safety issues that might be raised, but we will alert people during hunting season to wear orange and all the other general precautions. Okay, next, motorized vehicle use. So this is obviously kind of a hot topic in town. So anytime I get a chance to, I just want to lay out sort of what is specifically in the conservation easement. This is stuff that's baked in to the conservation easement. So for better or worse, this stuff is generally not up for debate. There is an interest within, within me, I should say, to really try and engage with the ATV community and find alternate places for them to ride, because this is a spot that historically people have been riding for years and years and years. And they rightfully felt kind of hurt and surprised when this happened. There are currently no legal places to ride in Powell. And so we want to figure out a way to maybe change that. And we hope by encouraging that effort, we can kind of divert people from riding in the town forest. The conservation easement for the Pownell Town Forest prohibits the use of motorized vehicles for recreational purposes with limited exceptions for ATVs and snowmobiles as described below. Dirt bikes and motorcycles are not considered to be ATVs for the purposes of these rules and are not permitted anywhere in the town forest for any reason, including access to the fish and game camps. So right off the bat, dirt bikes and motorcycles are 100% out. So the limited exceptions for ATVs are ATV riding is allowed to access the Fish and Game Club cabin via a designated route, which is basically just this main forest road that goes up there. It's going to begin at the new access point to the town forest on Nicholas Way and follow the main arterial road that runs along the street up to the camp. ATV riding is also going to be allowed to access a single scenic ADA overlook for the enjoyment of disabled persons on a designated route. So we're working on it. We've got a few spots identified that might work for that. But that will be, ideally somewhere near the Fish and Game Club so that we're not sending ATVs off into a totally different part of the forest. And then, the ADA hunting blind idea we're looking into. Anything else in here? ATV use is not allowed during the winter months. Snowmobiles are allowed on certain trails during winter months, sort of as per the sort of Vermont laws. But there has to be, snow on the ground, for one. The other big one for snowmobiles and ATVs is at no time shall snowmobile be allowed in Reservoir Hollow area or in ecological protection zone. So there are a few places that Tessa mentioned that are really important, and Reservoir Hollow, which is sort of there's the valley that the hunting camp is in. There's another valley further down towards the New York border that is a particularly sensitive area. So we're cutting all ATV and snowmobile use off over there. And then both for ATVs and snowmobiles, you have to have your your vehicle registered with VAST or VASA, all the appropriate sort of insurance, et cetera. And you need to have your, decal on your snowmobile if you're riding out there. Okay, great. So that's the tough stuff. Here's the fun stuff. So these are our conservation goals. So I'm just going to kind of roll through these pretty quickly here. So the first one is trail connectivity, which also Tessa mentioned. So we have been working with the VYCC on building a trail, and we're hoping to continue working with them and possibly the Green Acres, which is another great nonprofit, to do some trail work, hopefully in 26. And then sort of the next project that we're focused on after this initial loop is going to be our Taconic Crest Connector Trail, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, that we're really excited about. So then we're going to have a kiosk by the parking lot once the parking lot is built. And Concom and Parks and Recreation are going to kind of focus on getting that built and then making sure that we have sort of relevant info posted up there at all times. Protecting sensitive areas is another big goal. So one of the big areas of interest, which Michael alluded to, is there is a spot sort of furthest south by the Hoosick River where there's some evidence of pre-European Native American and also early European sort of artifacts and settlement there. We don't know a whole lot about it, so our sort of plan in general is just to basically try and block that off, put up a bunch of signs, and sort of sit on it until such a time as we can work with the Stockbridge, Muncie Band of Mohicans and others to like sort of do some research down there, do some archaeological work, whatever. So in the meantime, we just want to make sure we kind of keep people out of there so we don't do any damage. And then the last conservation goal we have here is interpretive signage. So, educational material about the flora and fauna. We talked about a nature walk in Parks and Recreation. And then also obviously, ATV or no ATV signs, information about ticks, and then historic info about the tannery. There's a lot of really interesting stories to tell here. So the Conservation Commission really wants to think about sort of how we can make this more than just, sort of a historic experience as well as being sort of a natural experience. Okay, so then recreation goals is another thing that this is mostly Jen put together, thankfully. But you'll see there's a lot of kind of overlap between the recreation goals and the conservation goals here. And we're working very closely on that. So trail connectivity, obviously, I won't get into that again since we already kind of talked about it. Parks and Recreation wants to work on finding a good gathering location somewhere down in the bottom of the town forest where we could put some picnic tables in, have a spot where you could bring little groups to hang out. So we've identified sort of the lowest logging landing, which is probably half a mile from the trailhead, as a good spot for doing that. It's got a little view out over the river. It's nice and flat and open and sunny. It's a really beautiful spot. Along with that, we want to think about whether we could do some educational programming, work with the elementary school or other schools around here, bring the Green Mountain Club out to do sort of a nature walk, bird watching hikes. We're kind of looking at all options right now, and any suggestions would be great. We also want to make sure we facilitate annual user group meetings to kind of engage the public on a consistent basis and get their feedback on how it's working, what they like, what they don't like, so we can kind of continuously be improving what's up there and making sure that it aligns with what people in our town want. We also want to work obviously on maps, outreach, and promotion. We've made some really good progress on that, and we're hoping to have both a physical and a digital map available of at least what we've got so far relatively soon. And then the last big priority for Parks and Recreation is looking at sort of advocating for attention to the forest in our town plan, working with the state to get wayfinding signage on the state roads to get people there, and then also looking for our next source of funding. because our grant is ending at the end of the year. So I think. Oh, there you go. Trail development plan. Do we need to get into this? I think in the interest of time here, we've talked about most of this stuff here already. But yeah, really, I think the 2026 goals are worth just taking a peek at here. So yeah, we want to finish the trail loop that we've been working on, finalize our design for the upper loop, which we've been working with the Taconic Hiking Club and others on. Get our wayfinding signage in, get our emergency gates up. That's the last kind of big project we need to do up there with this current grant. And then form this steering committee. And lastly, this is, I'll leave this up here as people are sort of filtering out. This is just a map of sort of my explorations of the trails. And I've been kind of grading the condition of the trails as I go. So you can see the proposed Taconic Crest connector on there. The green and white trails are the trails that are currently sort of very easily accessible and walkable now. And the blue trails are for if you're feeling adventurous. Those are, yeah, a little less well developed, but definitely findable.
Those evident, the lesser.
So there's very little signage up there. So the caveat, yeah, what I tell everybody is just if you start feeling like you're lost, just head downhill and kind of go wrong. Yeah, so the trails marked in blue are very easy to find, especially this time of year when the leaves are down. You'll just see them, they're generally pretty wide.
And how are they made originally?
Open logging.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of generations of logging trails sort of overlaid over the top. So the ones that are in best condition have been used recently by people at the Fish and Game Club. The blue trails are sort of the most recent logging operation, and then the sort of black and red and pink are either really old logging roads or goat paths, deer paths, things like that were sort of
Mark do not use?
What's that?
Is that why Mark do not use?
No, so that one little section there is marked do not use because it runs really, really close to the border adjoining a private
I
landowner.
just wondered, because I went right up over that bridge. So it's not-
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I'll point it out to you, like, we have an alternate way to get around that planned and flagged out, and it reconnects with that trail.
I wasn't on a trail when I did it anyway, I just wasn't.
Yeah,
We
we should talk, because yeah, that Taconic Crest Connector Trail is gonna be really the crown jewel of this forest in terms of hiking. It is.
Is that as we're.
That's the pink line going up there.
Yeah, okay.
So there's the beginning section of it is just goat paths and single track trails. And then once you get up to the sort of intersection of like up at the top of the ridge where you can go down into the next valley, that's where you hit that dry oak forest and you're walking through this really well-maintained forest road through dry oak forest.
Next slide.
Oh, there's and actually there's all these pictures in the background here are all actually, I think, or many of them are of that dry oak forest. Oh, dear, okay. So yeah, that's kind of all I got. Thank you guys for sticking around late.
That's all.
Questions? That was a marathon. Okay, questions?
On the horses,
Yeah,
are you, if you're looking into doing horses, if you haven't done it already, the US Forest Service has standards for horse trails versus bike trails versus pedestrian trails. I would, if you haven't looked into them already, I would encourage you to.
Okay.
They're very, very different types of trails
Mhm.
typically than a pedestrian or a biking trail. There are requirements on height, tree limbs, and a whole bunch of other things.
gotcha.
We have, on our staff, a former Forest Service roads engineer that we can lend you guys.
Ooh,
if
that would
you
be
need.
awesome, yeah.
If you really wanna do the horse thing. If you've got a lot of pitting and ruts and low hanging branches, I wouldn't even let anybody go out there with a horse.
Okay.
You've got a really that's a high risk activity that can really hurt somebody or kill somebody if they end up, if the horse puts their foot in the wrong place, breaks their leg, they fall and break their neck. You don't wanna be messing with that until you have those trails actually up to horse grade.
Cool.
Would be my.
Great, no, thank you, yeah, and this was something that was just brought up at the last select board meeting, so we're just starting to kind of dip our toes into learning
Yeah.
about it, and that's really helpful information.
I don't know if Parks and Rec has engineers on staff. So you guys might have do you have trails engineers on staff? I know Agency of Ag has engineers, I just don't know if.
Yeah, I know, we have a recreation crew that do the trail stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, either one of us, we have a former Forest Service
Mhm.
engineer on staff who's built those horse trails in the past for the Forest Service, so. Come springtime, if you wanna borrow him for a day, I can probably make that happen.
It was ranked very low in the Williams College environmental class.
Yeah. I
So
think that's why we initially.
we didn't
Yeah.
include it initially.
It's so high risk.
Yeah, so-
I would consider horseback riding much more dangerous than four wheelers or.
Mhm.
Or dirt bike,
Yeah.
just cause it's got a mind of its own.
Mhm.
Sure. Having ridden lots of horses and it's just my 2 cents. And the rest I'll put in the email.
Right on.
Hey, I just had a question about the bikes and the
Yeah.
what was the thinking about allowing bikes everywhere in the forest? And what was the thinking about allowing e-bike?
Well, yeah, so I think, the e-bikes came from public input. There were a bunch of people who specifically said that they were already e-biking up there. So yeah, I think where we're at currently is just the volume of people using the trails right now is so low that we really, I think in general, just want to kind of encourage as many people to use them as we can in as many ways as possible. I think looking longer term, I've been chatting with some folks from the BATS trail system, and there's a couple people who are maybe interested in working on developing like a dedicated mountain bike trail up there in the future. So I think long term, the goal would be to kind of move people to separate trails, but in the short term, as Tessa said, the logging roads are all shredded up anyway. I think for the time being, any place they can get to, they probably aren't going to be able to do much more damage than has already been done. And we're going to kind of continue evaluating as time goes on. If we start to see that there's problems, obviously we can sort of look at that. But
Are you gonna be decommissioning the old trails and restoring the area that they're impacting, or are you?
Can I speak?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Well, I guess, maybe I shouldn't cut in, but
No, go for it, yeah.
I guess one thing I didn't really mention is like when we'll plan with the harvest is when we have equipment on site, if these all happen as planned. Would be to close out trails that are actively eroding and install like water bars where they're needed to. And I think over time, the goal is to sort of try to focus as best we can recreation on those main loops and let those older trails like close out and regrow.
Mhm.
And I think that we're maybe not going around and creating barriers all over the place, but sort of try to funnel stuff and yeah.
Yeah, and definitely anywhere where we're trying to sort of encourage people to hike over time, we're going to be trying to brush in a lot of those logging roads into sort of narrower trails just to help deter ATVs from riding up there too.
Yeah, and I wanted to say quickly that I didn't speak very much about the trails, other than bringing up it was an issue and we hope to do something, but Nate and I were talking about the need to have really thorough mapping and monitoring of this trail system, and maybe you're figuring out a way to have volunteers help with that, or at least host a couple of walks with people to do that. So I just wanted to throw that out there quickly. It's going to be an ongoing, evolving thing. But if anyone is interested in potentially helping or joining, or even just coming out on a walk sometime this year with the two of us, I'm happy to take email addresses before you leave.
But Tess, are there, first of all, I'm not a mountain biker, so I don't know. Do people go off trail routinely? And are there areas of this forest where you would be really worried about them going off trail if they're mountain biking?
I'm not a mountain biker. I'm like, but I don't know about that community, and if they go off trails routinely, the places where I really wouldn't want them to go off trail, I hope they wouldn't be anyway. It's like in those right.
They generally don't unless they're illegally cutting trails, so you would know. They don't just kind of go off like you would if you're hunting or wandering.
Yeah,
It's hard to. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're riding, you're gonna get hit with that, my understanding is mostly, I do mountain bike, it's hard to go off trail.
And there's
Not get cut up and.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's work to be done. I mean, I've tried to ride my bike up in there and I think even a really strong biker isn't gonna really make it that far. And it's sort of in the current shape that it's in just because it's so steep and gotta run it out. So yeah, if we start having problems with too many bikers, in some ways, that's like a good problem to have. And then we can start working with these folks, because they're very excited about finding some lines that they can take that would be, I think for mountain bikers too, it's obviously better if you have your own dedicated trail system. So yeah, that's another really long-term project. But it's our hope that we've got kind of the right people starting to come together to do it in like a responsible way. And obviously with the guidance of Tessa and others, as we go.
So what you were saying about the ATVs, that you're not looking to have any sort of spot where they could be up in the forest, right? In the town forest. You're talking about another somewhere else in Pownell?
Oh, yeah. So the town forest is like anywhere other than that one road in the
Yeah.
town forest is off limits. Yeah, I think my vision for that would be working with local riders to establish a VASA chapter in Pownell, and then work with VASA to try and kind of look at sort of where that might be possible. To sort of tie riders from Powell into the existing network that's just a few miles north of us that nobody can get to right now, which is why they ride all over the roads and on the AT. I in talking with folks in that community, I really do understand where they're coming from, because we really don't give them a whole lot of options, and they don't want to ride illegally. They don't like getting those really expensive tickets, but they don't really have much of a choice right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Else?
And would they, again, where would they be riding in the winter in the town forest? They mean not the ATVs, but the
snowmobiles.
Yeah.
So
Park's not really developed yet.
Yeah.
So it's like a 3 to 5 year
Okay.
plan is more like a snowmobile.
I think don't quote me on this. I think technically by law, the snow, like if there's good winter cover and a snowmobile could find a way up there, they could ride up one of the logging road. I don't think they can ride on the Taconic Crest Trail, but
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, part of what's in the proposed plan includes like they have to be registered with FASA and,
Mhm.
a whole bunch of things. But I think in the proposal, it's kind of like in the future, snowmobiles, if that becomes popular, there's a desire. for
I don't get the impression, I haven't heard anyone talking about riding snowmobile up there personally, yeah. So hopefully it's not that big of an issue. But I know like, for instance, on like the Appalachian Trail, like once there's snow cover, that's the designated vast trail. So I think that's typically how they do it, is like once there's enough snow, there's less of a concern about them damaging whatever's underneath.
Is
Cool. Okay. Whew.
there this other question or just a comment? Just a comment. Okay.
The more development of good single track and shared use trails, the less likely mountain bikers will go off trail. That's absolutely true. I'm really excited about the opportunities that we have for trail development. It's gonna be a long process, but because of all these logging roads that already exist there, they've really done a lot of the work of finding the path of least resistance in a lot of places. So we just need to be kind of strategic about, what we work on and then what we try and kind of block off. Cool. Well, obviously, any further questions can be directed to me via concom4@townofpownell.org, or anyone else on Concom, Parks and Recreation. We're happy to answer more questions. And thank you guys all so much for coming, and thanks, Jen, thanks, Tessa. Yeah, really appreciate you guys. Thanks, Kate. If you want me to just end the meeting, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, see you guys later, thank you.